Okay, so we have a lot of documents, a lot of artifacts. This is a pretty cool one from Thomas Jefferson. You see his name up here. This was when Thomas Jefferson was Secretary of State under George Washington's presidency. It says, Thomas Jefferson presents his compliments to Captain Cutting and inform him that the president, that's George Washington, counts on him and the matter spoken of, the article of money shall be arranged at 1793. Now, money being arranged, well, what are we talking about? Interestingly enough, there were some Muslim nations in North Africa who were attacking what they believed to be Christian nations, and they had captured American trade ships, and they were holding Americans as hostage and prisoners. And so American actually sent a delegation, sent a diplomat to go try to negotiate with these nations and try to get the Americans released. At this time, the Muslim nations refused to allow any American on board. They wouldn't give them a pass to even come into their nation. And so they had to come back. It was, I think, 1796 when finally George Washington was able to negotiate to release those individuals. It was $1.25 million at that time, their money, to negotiate the release for Americans that have been captured by these Muslim nations. It's actually part of what led to the Barbary Powers War, the Barbary Pirates, that whole scenario. But this is one of the original documents we have from Thomas Jefferson pertaining to the Barbary Pirates and the Barbary Powers War. Okay, so we have a lot of documents, a lot of artifacts. This is a pretty cool one from Thomas Jefferson. You see his name up here. This was when Thomas Jefferson was Secretary of State under George Washington's presidency. It says, Thomas Jefferson presents his compliments to Captain Cutting and inform him that the president, that's George Washington, counts on him and the matter spoken of, the article of money shall be arranged at 1793. Now, money being arranged, well, what are we talking about? Interestingly enough, there were some Muslim nations in North Africa who were attacking what they believed to be Christian nations, and they had captured American trade ships, and they were holding Americans as hostage and prisoners. And so American actually sent a delegation, sent a diplomat to go try to negotiate with these nations and try to get the Americans released. At this time, the Muslim nations refused to allow any American on board. They wouldn't give them a pass to even come into their nation. And so they had to come back. It was, I think, 1796 when finally George Washington was able to negotiate to release those individuals. It was $1.25 million at that time, their money, to negotiate the release for Americans that have been captured by these Muslim nations. It's actually part of what led to the Barbary Powers War, the Barbary Pirates, that whole scenario. But this is one of the original documents we have from Thomas Jefferson pertaining to the Barbary Pirates and the Barbary Powers War. All right, guys, there is a movie out called Oppenheimer. Do not endorse the movie at all. There's some things in it that are quite ridiculous and maybe quite inappropriate as well. With that being said, anytime you talk about the atomic bomb, it does bring up the discussion about America and was America bad for dropping the atomic bomb? Because there's some who make that argument. You're really going to make that argument if you don't know the actual story. We have a lot of original artifacts from individuals involved with the atomic bomb, specifically the dropping of the atomic bomb. So we have things from Dutch von Kirk, who was the navigator. We have things from Paul Tibbets, who was the pilot. And part of the things that they acknowledge is the reason the atomic bombs were dropped. And so this is a picture of the destruction. You see written in cursive. And then you see down here, Dutch von Kirk, the navigator. You see navigator. He explains that they only dropped the bomb after they'd already dropped millions of leaflets. Well, these are some of the leaflets that were dropped over in Japan, alerting them to the fact that we wanted the war to end and their emperor wasn't going to surrender. And so we were dropping bombs to destroy military support facilities. But the leaflets we dropped, we actually identified these cities that had those military installations, military support facilities. And we said, please leave the city because these bombs don't have eyes. We don't want people to get hurt that don't need to be hurt. We're trying to end this war. And this is part of the reality that's been forgotten. And one of the things that we have from Dutch von Kirk. So this one specifically shows the destruction. And let me just read it to you. It says, most people do not recall why we dropped the atomic bombs. It was forgotten after 64 years, only remembering the large casualties they caused. We dropped the bombs to end the war and stop the killing by destroying military support facilities, defending against an invasion. Earlier, we dropped millions of leaflets, which were largely ignored. The reason they dropped the atomic bombs was to prevent having to do a ground invasion, which they knew estimates were it could be between 10 and 15 million people both the Allied forces, the Japanese that would have died had there been a ground invasion. And they said, there's got to be a better way. Let's try dropping this really big bomb. And they dropped the big bombs. And 300,000 people did die. And that's a lot of people. But 300,000 people is way less than 10 to 15 million, which is what the estimates were had they done a ground invasion. The point is, there's way more to the story than what most people know. If you want to find out more to the story, you can go to wallbuilders.com, where we do have some of these artifacts online you actually can read for yourself, and we have stories written about this as well. Go to wallbuilders.com to find out more. Oh, hey guys, didn't even see you there. Just reading my Founders Bible that we now have back in stock. We have waited so long to get these back in stock. They're finally here. If you don't have a Founders Bible, you really should get one. Not only is it a Bible, which is the most important thing, but we talk so much at Wall Builders about the biblical foundations of the nation. And in this Bible, we actually, as you go through the Bible, normal Bible, but as you go through, we put founding fathers' quotes and statements about Bible verses by the actual Bible verses they're quoting. So when the founding fathers talked about where did they come up with the ideas for some of the systems of government, some of the laws we have in place for institutions, for business, for economic structures, they actually have their quotes in this Bible by the verses they are referencing and quoting. It's footnoted, so you can go back, you can read their letters, find out more. This is one of the most incredible resources, not just to learn the Word of God, which again is the most important thing, but to see how the Bible literally shaped the foundation of this nation that made America the most stable, free, prosperous nation in the history of the world. Finally, they are now back in stock on our website. I feel like it's been nearly a year we've been waiting for these, but they're back. Go to wallbuilders.com. You can get your own copy of the Founders Bible. As you might can see on the table in front of us, we have a lot of documents and artifacts as well that we've been collecting, and more than just what's on the table, but some pretty special ones.
Yeah. 4 centuries of American education, going back to the first public school law back in 1642. For the first 3 centuries, education was to teach you how to think. In the last century, it's been to teach you how to learn. We've got assembly lines, so you don't need to think. We want you to just do what we tell you.
Let me tell part of that story, because it really is worth helping people connect the dots on this. So when you get to the second industrial revolution, right? It's the late 1800s, early 1900s. You have all of these assembly lines, right? I mean, you have like the Model T, right? You Ford assembly line. As this is happening, Rockefeller, really big guy, financially, but he starts an educational foundation. It's one of the first of its kind. He gives it millions of dollars, and the foundation's goal, and this is like their stated objectives, their foundation's goal is not to produce better thinkers, but better workers. They wanted people who would just take orders in the factory, just do what you're told. If we tell you, right, nut and bolt, screw it together, just do what you're told. They begin to shift education to accommodate this objective. In shifting the educational standards, they introduce things like multiple choice. They introduce things like true, false, like fill in the blank, because at that point they want to know, can you repeat what you were told? Right? The teacher said this. Can you fill in the blank, the word that's missing what the teacher told you? Multiple choice. Which one of these did the teacher tell you it was? All it was regurgitating, repeating what you were told, because now we're not teaching you how to be critical thinkers, how to be problem solvers, how to use some reasoning skill and abilities. We're teaching you to absorb and regurgitate, to become a parrot, right? To do whatever you're told. That was the idea behind it. And certainly it was the objective of progressives to get us to this point. We are seeing now modern education, the result of what that is, which we've talked on radio before. I mean, COVID should have been a really good indication for a lot of us when initially they told us, hey, if you wear a mask, you're good. Actually, no. First of all, masks don't work. You don't need a mask. And then, okay, now masks work, but then you need 2 or 3 masks. And already, like not even to go further yet. But living in the country, back when we were thinking masks made a difference and you put a mask on and you're like, I still smell the cows. Like that should have been an indication to anybody in the outdoors. If you can smell things through the mask, then that whatever COVID thing you think this is you're fighting, those are smaller particles than the smell you are smelling from the cows. And if you can smell anyway, like it should have been a little obvious for most of us. But as they go through, well, right, if you get the vaccine, then nothing bad can happen. Okay, well, maybe you can still get sick, but you won't die. Okay, maybe you'll die, but the chances are lowered. And then they come to find out, actually, some of the highest death rates were from people that had the vaccine. All that to say is there are people still to this day that stand by all of that thing that happened because all they're doing is repeating what they're told. They're not being critical thinkers and problem solvers. back up to earlier generations. One of the things that used to be the priority was being critical thinkers and problem solvers. And so part of how they did that, they would have these, what were known as forensics. And it was to learn the art of public argumentation. So you're learning how to debate an issue. But to debate an issue, you got to know how to think through the issue.
Yeah, to debate it, you've got to be able to recognize the weaknesses of the other argument, what the other side is saying, what are the strengths in yours, how do you defend yours. And so we have a list of forensics that were done in the early 1800s, 1803, thereabouts. And they would take morally ambiguous subjects that you could not say is absolutely morally right or wrong, and you debate that. One of the topics was the founding fathers, when they did the Boston Tea Party. Do you condemn that as an act of civil disobedience, or do you praise that as an act of patriotism? And you can take either side, and there's not a clear right and wrong on that, but that was the point. You had to learn how to think. So with the forensics, I was asked recently, just this week, I said, what are all the 160,000 things you have, what's your favorite stuff? And I go, man, they got big stuff. It's got to be stuff like the first Bible printed in English in America, the Bible of the Revolution, and the Pilgrim's Bible, the Geneva Bible. It's got to be like the D-Day flag, landing on D-Day.
George Washington's hair.
George Washington's hair.
Letter from George Washington,
yeah.
letter from Lafayette, the stuff from Lincoln. I mean, there's some really cool stuff in the collection.
This is now one of my favorites.
It's good.
It is at such a different level. This is a letter from John Quincy Adams in 1786, and he's in his third year at Harvard, and the next night he is going to engage in a forensic debate with one of his classmates named William Cranch. And so the debate is scheduled from 8 to 10 on Wednesday night, the next night. This is a letter that John Quincy Adams, 4-page letter, he writes to his friend William Cranch, and it is hilarious. He starts off basically trash talking him. I'm going to just nail your hide to the wall tomorrow night. When we have this debate, you don't stand a chance. And he just trash talks him back and forth. And then he talks about the fact, and he makes fun of me. He says, now, if you want to convert to my side, that's really good, that I'm the right side. But if you believe wrong, I believe in the rights of conscience, so I'll allow you to believe what's wrong. It goes on. All right, so what's the debate over? For 2 hours, they're going to debate. You know what a stick of asparagus looks like. He's got a stick of asparagus, and it's white on one end where you cut it, and it's green on the other end where it grows. And the debate for 2 hours is, did God intend you to eat the white end first or the green end first? We're going to debate that for 2 hours? No, we're teaching you how to think. Think about the weaknesses in the argument. I mean, that is one of the exercises they had back then, which is why these guys were unbelievable thinkers.
And we will get that on the website because it's really funny to hear him going through it, because he's actually arguing for the white side, which I feel like, right, more nutrients in the green side.
I think I would do the green side. I would just, yeah.
But that wasn't the point, right? The point was learning to think through what are the strengths and weaknesses of this position. How can you strategically argue from this side, which is what he did. So just really fun seeing some of the early educational things. This is one of the most significant things that we now have. This is a clipped signature. That is Button Gwinnett. Now, if we were to take a poll, how many of you know who Button Gwinnett was? I'm going to say the odds are like maybe one of you have heard that name before. Maybe nobody. Button Gwinnett was a signer of the Declaration. Now, why don't we know his name? Because after he signed the Declaration, he went home, he got in an argument with somebody, he got in a duel, he got shot, and he died. Well, because he died early, most founding fathers went on to become leaders and governors. They were involved in politics. So there's lots of documents they signed and lots of letters they wrote. Well, he died early. And when he died, it was early in the revolution and nobody knew we were going to win. And so the idea of him having a lot of documents was already scarce. And then people wanting to preserve them, thinking this guy's really important, also was limited. There are very few signatures known from Button Gwinnett. And the reason it's called the clip signature is because this would have been a part of a full document, but they clipped out the signature on the bottom. Button Gwinnett is considered the hardest signature of the signers of the Declaration to acquire. There are 56 signers of the Declaration. We currently had 53 until we acquired this one, which is the hardest, and it was the 54th signer of the Declaration.